Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 4 of the 15th annual Transforming the Teaching and Learning Environment virtual conference. Yes, I'm Bob Hales. I'm your moderator. Don't forget, we have the Wall Street Journal midday today doing another little workshop. And actually, I found it informative and interesting. It'd be nice if you drop by so they make sure they get value for the money they gave us. So, as you can see, our session to kick off the day is the joy of online education, the unexpected moments. Joy, you mean there's joy in this? Wow, I'll be interested to learn about that. We have with us somebody who I just went away. Well, we have Carrie Doyle and we have Lisa Wabi Veet and Melissa Singh. And I'll let you all describe a little bit what your role is. And you're going to tell us all the ways we can have joy with online education other than drinking and doing drugs. Okay. So take it away, guys.
Sounds good. I think other ways of finding joy, and as the slide kind of shows, it's the unexpected moments. It's the times that you're going along in your presentation because you planned it, and then something happens, whether it's, I always tell my students, like, the tail of a cat going across the screen or the barking of a dog. You just never know. A baby, a child, an adult coming through, and you just never know. And everybody stops and laughs or has a moment of, the tension is broken. And here we are in this online room in a comfortable space in your own space. And we're all laughing. And it's a great moment for us to capture and think about. There are other parts of online education that we'll talk about where even in planning sessions and curriculum and pedagogy and all of those wonderful things, you stop and you go, we didn't anticipate that, but that was actually better than we planned it. So hopefully we bring that into the session. My name is Melissa Singh. I am located in Orlando, Florida. I come to you with over 20 years of online education experience, starting at UCF and now at University of Southern California and the Suzanne Dwork Peck School of Social Work, which you'll hear throughout the presenters today. My background is I'm a social worker by training. I have a master's in health administration, and then I finished my EDD in 2017 from RASI or at USC. My experience is in healthcare mostly and hospice, but I've recently been, I say recently now, it's probably been 10 years, been doing disaster relief, and my interest areas are caregiving, burnout, caregiver burnout experience, compassion fatigue, environmental justice, and always DEI and how it intersects with different spaces. Before I move it on, I want to say, don't hold any questions. This is informal. This is us talking to you, having a conversation, engaging you all. So don't hold your questions. Put your virtual hand up. If I don't hear you, wave, do what you got to do, and we'll see you. Pass it over to one of my presenters. You want to go, Lisa?
I'll go next. My name's Lisa Wabi Veet. I'm also from the University of Southern California, Suzanne Dwork Peck School of Social Work. I also happen to live in Florida. I live about 3.5 hours south of Melissa. I live in Parkland, Florida. My background, although it did not overlap all that much with Melissa's, we've had a trajectory. My background is in children and youth and mental health. I did a lot of work specializing in healthcare and in schools. And I've spent the latter part of my career focusing on those that have come to address trauma in some sort of way. In the last 5 years, being a Parkland resident, I have focused on trauma responsiveness for my community, and I'm a consultant to the school district here around trauma support and family support. So a lot of my discussions often aren't around joy, it's around grief and around trauma. So I always enjoy these moments. I also taught at UCF at a very different time from Melissa, and I've been at USC for this is my 13th year. And so I'll pass it on to Carrie.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. My name is Carrie Doyle. I don't live in Florida, but I just came back from Florida from vacation, and I would love to live in Florida like Melissa and Lisa, but I don't. I live in Narragansett, Rhode Island, so I'm in the Northeast. My professional clinical experience as a clinical social worker has been primarily with adolescents and their families in the judicial setting, the private practice setting, as well as the school setting. Similar to Lisa, I do have a professional passion around trauma outcomes, trauma treatment, in particular crisis response and recovery after mass violence, as well as trauma sensitive mindfulness practices. I have been, similar to Melissa and Lisa, I've been a professor at the USC Susan Dvorak Peck School on their virtual academic center since 2011. Prior to that, I did teach in a local brick and mortar university, but I've been primarily virtual for the last 12 years.
That's really important that we have always been virtual faculty members at USC. Our program was nationwide, or is nationwide. So we have students from coast to coast, Hawaii as well. And just understanding how big the program is, I'm going to give you a little bit of context before we move into the slides. What happened in, around COVID, and it shut the school down in a way that was very impactful. As you know, we have, personal and professional lives. And as we are trying to process personally, you start to see the agencies that our students were going to for their practicum experience, they're closing, and these students are 2 months away from graduation, and they're calling and they're emailing saying, what do I do? I'm not going to graduate. My whole life trajectory, my professional career path has been thrown off. The student loans and all of these ideas are coming to students, and we're processing COVID. We're trying to understand COVID. As a practicum department, we had to swing into gear very quickly and think about what could we do that is alternative to the traditional student walk into an agency or organization, earn their practicum hours, which are required for graduation. And we came together as a department. There's 2 programs we're going to talk about. One is going to be a brand new program, and the other program is going to be a program that was already developed but had to alter a little bit. Let me pass it over to Carrie and start some slides. There we go.
All right, thank you. As Melissa said, USC has had a virtual academic center since 2010, and we were one of the first MSW CSWE accredited virtual programs that had synchronous and asynchronous. So over those 10 years, when the pandemic hit in 2020, we had really worked our curriculum and our platforms to create a streamlined, well-oiled delivery system that proactively managed disruptions. We were trying to minimize disruptions, and we had really fine-tuned it over those first 10 years. And then in the spring of 2020, like Melissa said, we and everyone else experienced the ultimate unexpected moment. And so we really had to leverage our strengths and based off what we had available as far as resources and programs. So as Melissa said, we could assist these students and not delay their progression in their program, in their professional goals because of this. So we had to think really creatively. And I think after 10 years of really fine tuning it, sometimes when you do this, you have such a well-oiled program, sometimes that joy of the unexpected moments gets lost. And so what we initially thought from the pandemic and these changes, that was something that was required and forced, became this unexpected moment of joy for us all as faculty. And it reminded us about the opportunities for collaboration, academic freedom, and the deepening of our collegial connections and our student connections. So we really developed a new program, as well as leveraged an existing program. So the School Social Work Experiential Trauma Training Program, that program had been in existence. It is a 12-week trauma responsive school social work training. It's a virtual training for students that are placed at K through 12 school placement sites during the summertime. Oftentimes during the summertime, when K through 12 students have summer break, the richness of learning opportunities is not available to our MSW students placed in the schools. So we like to enhance that with a trauma responsive training because unfortunately, as we all know, there is overwhelming psychosocial need in our schools today. And also just the amount of violence that is in our schools today. And as Lisa mentioned, as a Parkland resident and her work, we're really trying to support schools by equipping our school social workers with this trauma responsive training. And so the existing program was designed for just a small number of students. And so we originally designed it, gosh, for 20, 30 students, right, Lisa?
Yes, it was a much smaller, much more intimate setting where we could have not only information sharing, but also dialogue. And so when that number blossomed, we really had to rethink, how do we create some of those opportunities?
And that number blossomed, everybody, quite quickly in the spring of 2020, from like 25, 30 students to 90 students. And Lisa and I were really perplexed because this program was designed to be engaging and dialogue, and we did not want it to turn into a traditional lecture format because we felt like there was value in the engagement. So we really had to pivot this program with the expanded need. And so how we did that was we didn't want to lose that engagement synchronous time. So we actually, rather than one session a week, we incorporated 2 synchronous sessions a week. So the students had more face time with us. The first session was a skill building session where we would have guest speakers. We would present as well on the material. We kept it very interactive with polls, surveys, breakout rooms. And then the second asynchronous session of the week, which we added, was basically consultation time, so the students could interact with each other and really start to apply the knowledge they were learning on the first session of the week. So we would often have role plays, assessments that they could complete. So this program, because of COVID and the pivot we had, became more interactive. We started using Slack as well. And Lisa and I were really challenged to start incorporating more technology into our SWET program. So it was really unexpected. And now many of the students, our roster has dropped, right? Again, we're going back to that smaller roster size, but Lisa and I have decided to keep the program format because we didn't realize the unexpected results of connection with the students, the students connecting with each other. So this was a program that originally was designed that we had to pivot, but we liked the changes so much that we kept them. The second program is an entirely new program that was developed out of the pandemic. It's the Experiential Learning Labs. And Melissa was one of the creators and basically took this from development to implementation. So I'm going to toss it to Melissa. Melissa, did you want to talk a little bit about the ELLs?
Yeah, so while we have different departments, if you will, or tracks or specializations within our school, and the children, youth, and family is a large one, but the second largest one was adults, mental health and well-being. And while, you know, the interns that were going to schools had an alternative, everybody else did not. And so we put our heads together and we thought, okay, we need to create something brand new. What could we do that's exciting, engaging, and also abides by the competencies set forth by the Council on Social Work Education? So we said definitely for the spring, we have to do this. We have to come together. What could we do? What are our resources? Our resources are faculty members. So we asked faculty members, would you be willing to create, and really important, an experiential learning lab, not just kind of what we're doing and talking to you and lecturing to you. So really using the Kolb, the experiential learning cycle, so that students are able to learn something, observe something, practice, but also receive the feedback immediately from the person leading the session. It evolved from the faculty members, but faculty members were the primary facilitators, to we had external experts that wanted to come in, and they were hosted by faculty members. Then we had, as the program continued to evolve, doctoral students wanted to present their information. So again, unexpected joy that we started to bring the community together, the community of learners, the community of faculty, the community outside the school that wanted to come in and pitch in and provide spaces for students to learn. It also turned out that these facilitators, faculty, outside experts, and students wanted to provide information that may not have been published yet. So it was cutting edge, it was real world, it was happening now. It may have been some research that they were working on or something that they were going to present. And I'll see if my co-presenters here want to tell a story, but things that they were going to move into in the future. So it was exciting. It was new. The students were engaged. I thought, and we capped the numbers, you know, saying you can only earn so many field hours. And we looked at how many hours they needed for those students to graduate. And we were very mindful, like, you know, the person that needs the most is this number. And then as we continued into the summer and then fall and then the next spring, we realized that there were some students that did not need the field hours. So the original reason for creating the labs, as the practicum department started to understand and build virtual learning opportunities, we still had students that were demanding the labs because they were engaged. They were, it was a different community. They were building, we have a social work grand challenge that's harnessing technology for social good, reducing social isolation during COVID. All of these things started to happen organically. I didn't anticipate it. We were worried about logistics and attendance and records and making sure, you know, everybody had the right information, making sure that the rooms were open and everybody had, you know, the Zoom room information. But the community building was something that was unanticipated for us. Do you all want to talk about your your session?
Yeah, so you know, Lisa and I actually presented an ELL together because of our background in crisis response and recovery around school trauma. Again, that's not part of the normative curriculum within our school program. And we had the opportunity through the ELLs to present this information again that's not normally shared with students in the program. And we had so many students in attendance that wanted to learn about crisis response and recovery and trauma in schools that wouldn't ordinarily have had access to this information. Lisa, did you want to jump in about your experience with the ELL that we did?
I also found, and we're going to be kind of going over this as we continue on through progressing through the slides, but it was also an opportunity to really engage with students. We were able to, Carrie and I were presenting, we presented a presentation that we were going to be presenting to 500, people across the country. And our students were the first people to actually get to experience that presentation, to provide feedback. And it really gave a connection to students that continue to reach out to us today, some that were not based in schools, but had a true interest, as we're seeing the transition of mass violence outside of just, school facilities. And that was a little bit the focus of the topic focus, but it really helped bring about not only some professional growth for myself to kind of have those opportunities to really explore with students, what they needed and how they received the material, but also some long-term mentoring as students who were very interested in topics could then come back to faculty and be engaged throughout their educational process and beyond, because oftentimes students will come back as they're experiencing challenges within their own communities as they serve sometimes as first responders. And so it was really kind of transition into that deepening that connection in the virtual classroom. I was not even paying attention to the flip over of how did these different opportunities allow for that virtual classroom to build. And this is something that we've been doing for many, many years. And with our trauma program, the first session is a pretty intensive lecture, because we brought in guest speakers from all over who are subject experienced. And oftentimes there was a large amount of time that was focused on just introducing topics, introducing concepts. And we did have a small amount of time to process at the end. But when we added processing sessions, and I think that first year, when we had 90 students, we offered 3 or 4 different opportunities for students to come throughout the week. So they would receive the information on Monday, and it was a 2.5-hour session for information gathering. And then we also provided some additional resources that would engage our community providers that are hosting our students. So we provided like a checklist of items to talk about in supervision, an overview of what we were discussing, so that they could also engage with their practicum instructor in the topics. But we offered these 3 or 4 other sessions that were voluntary. So the students needed the hours, and we knew that the Monday hours were a requirement, but we were surprised at the voluntary opportunities for drop-ins where we were doing processing, we were doing breakouts, we were using all the technology to engage both in an individual way, but also in small groups and in dialogue where they felt more comfortable. Because oftentimes you're in a lecture hall of 90 students talking about intense topics. We really wanted that opportunity to process. And when we really look at how the end of the semester resulted, many students attended not for the hours to meet an hour requirement. They attended for the opportunity to process, to practice, to engage in dialogue across different areas. A lot of people, when we're checking in, a lot of people from the Northeast, the one amazing component, I think, of virtual education when we have the entire country engaged and we have students from all different states, is really talking about some of the differences in practice from different regions, from different a different lens. Being California based, Florida had a very different COVID response. So we were able to incorporate a lot of what was important to the students and how they were supporting youth in their communities, but also information sharing. And it developed a culture of a connection that has extended just beyond a classroom, but it extended for an entire profession of students who are, engaged in really seeking support of students in school settings. And so for the trauma program, it really built such a close-knit community and an opportunity for me personally. I don't teach trauma coursework in the university, and it was an opportunity for me to really share a lot of my passion. Outside of this program, I teach, all of my classes are in practicum or in placement opportunities. So it really is an opportunity to get to share what my passion projects, and to really kind of build on those. And I think Carrie and I still to this day, even although our census is much smaller, we continue to offer the processing sessions, and we're always trying to look at ways of engagement that are so important.
Thanks, Lisa. So having that EDD, I started to think for the ELL session, like, how are we going, are we going to have asynchronous material? I know we have an instructional designer in the room, so I'm thinking we need to design the session so that, that we have information flowing back and forth. Like, how are we going to do this? And we realized we didn't need asynchronous material. The learners actually appreciated receiving the information, and we didn't have the time or capacity to build an async platform or classroom for all of the labs. So I would say in its entirety, if I gave you numbers, we had over 100 unique labs. We provided close to 3,000 practicum hours to students. We had over 200 unique students that went to and students that were in different places in the program that were coming to the experiential lab. So you see how large the program grew very quickly. So we didn't have time to do async, but it was okay because students appreciated learning directly from the lab facilitator. Designing the session, thinking about the time that you want, rather than it's 15 weeks and it's 75 minutes of synchronous and they have 1.5 hours of asynchronous, and thinking about all of those things. The facilitator said, I want it to be a 60-minute, a 90-minute, a 2 hours. We had some that were over the course of multiple days. So the faculty had control over how much material or how, whether it's intro, advanced, even if it's experiential. So they were able to design the session. What resulted was that there was critical thinking and meaningful discussion, because these very intentionally designed sessions created a room of respect and trust. Again, joys of online education. Didn't realize that was going to happen that quickly within the program. There was high quality feedback. There were the lab facilitators, again, faculty members, or maybe doc students or experts could say, I only want 15 students, or I want 15 students because I'm going to take them to a virtual field trip into another space. Or I want a large room. They were able to set their parameters as they wanted to, and that deepened the connection. So as we continue to move on, we're about halfway through, maybe a little more. Think about what opportunities do you have for developing an emotional connection between students, faculty, even staff, and the community.
Great. So another of the unexpected joys, besides the opportunity to deepen connection with students and have students deepen connections with the others, was myself and my colleagues, and you've heard both Melissa and Lisa mention this, was we experienced an unexpected joy in sharing our professional passions. We all have diverse professional passion and interests, and we don't always have the opportunity to share this with students or even with each other because we follow a school-approved curriculum. And so with these two programs, we were given permission to color outside the lines and really to deviate from that traditional content. And we were able to be invigorated as a faculty. And that was a true joy to be able to share what really is our passion, because I'll speak for myself, when I'm sharing a passion, it's really not just a job, it's a passion. And so to have that unexpected opportunity to collaborate with colleagues who also share similar passions and interests, and to be given the opportunity to deliver this content and to allow students to have experience to this subject content that they might not have received through the curriculum, and to spark that interest in them. And so it was really just a joy in being able to share on topics that we were professionally interested in. And, sometimes, like I said, after 10 years of really creating a well-oiled machine, those unexpected moments or time to share with each other weren't as plentiful. And I think from this experience, I think our leadership has really focused on connecting with us as faculty to see what our professional interests are and how to incorporate that within our faculty roles as well. So this had a long-standing impact that went up to the top about how do we allow faculty to have a component of their job that focuses on them sharing their passion with students and sharing their passion with other colleagues. So to kind of prompt reflection as well, similar to Melissa, we would ask you all to think about how much of your role right now is your passion and your interest. And are there creative ways that you can incorporate that in your work to share with others?
So one of the components, as we spent a lot of time talking about our well-oiled machine also really supported a large number of students. So as we're doing the work, sometimes we don't have time to color outside the lines. And honestly, unless I worked very directly with someone, I didn't have the opportunity to communicate about what kind of work are they doing outside of academia. And often many of our faculty have different interests, have different areas of maybe service to the community, service to various populations, and having a database, because what the ELLs became was almost a database of people's interest in areas, because just as students could go look at all the topics, and it was beautifully created by Melissa to really be very streamlined for students to identify who was presenting, what the topics were. It was also an opportunity for faculty to browse and look at, okay, what's happening in the community? How are we integrating and interacting with our agency partners? We have, 1,000 students that go into community-based placements every day. And so we were partnering with agencies to come in and provide content material. We were getting to identify, what service or special projects our faculty were engaged in based on some of the topics they discussed. So for the most part, in the many years, especially being a virtual employee, my interactions were sometimes limited to those that were in my department who I worked closely with. And I didn't have the opportunity to interact with other teaching faculty or tenured faculty. And this kind of blurred those lines a little bit, because we had those opportunities to really even sit in on somebody else's presentation and hear what their, what their work is involved in. And then how do we make that connection as we continue on? And so it was really an opportunity to kind of build that network, because, I can share for myself. I work teaching field and practicum related courses, but a lot of my time is in placement. I place 50% of the students in the virtual program across the country. And so I had a very narrow view of, what my day-to-day work was. And this kind of really looked at, okay, how do I extend that? Because we were also building the resources of our faculty that were previously ground-based and might not have had the amount of experience in the virtual realm. And how could we partner and create those collaborations to support them? It really, I always say COVID for virtually was a little bit of the equalizer of, everyone was learning and experiencing a virtual reality for sometimes the first time. And this also included a lot of our agencies. So how were we helping build some of their capacity to offer services and meet the needs of their communities through this ongoing dialogue as we were trying to pivot in different ways around COVID.
So I'm going to go back. I'm going to go to academic freedom, but I also want to go back to technology as well. So the AAUP's 1999 statement on the freedom to teach includes the right of faculty to select the materials, determine the approach to the subject, make the assignments, assess the student academic performance in teaching activities, for which faculty members are individually responsible without having their decisions subject to the veto of a department chair, dean, or other administrative officer. So while we all know this, as if we were faculty members, we were restrained to a Zoom platform. So faculty that were on our campus teaching, now we're in the Zoom room trying to figure out, how do I translate what I was doing in the classroom space, the physical classroom, to an online classroom. And while this could, bring up feelings of, fear or kind of disillusionment, not sure how things work, but also a learning curve for people that have not experienced the Zoom room to really think, okay, what am I going to use? And if you all think back, I think we all have some sort of technology. 3 years ago, Zoom isn't what Zoom is today. Zoom was a little bit of a different platform. There were limitations. There were not as many features and opportunities as there are now. And then we stumbled together in order to continue to have the academic freedom that we had, regardless of what space we're in. So in the experiential learning labs, I know also in the SWEET program, they also were using file share, chat box. Our university decided to adopt Slack as an opportunity to collaborate and build relationships and share information. So we were leveraging the technology. We were using the whiteboard, and now the whiteboard is, I was just using it yesterday. It's much more sophisticated than it used to be in the Zoom room. We were trying to, really find spaces and places for technology to help fill in the gaps that we had created through COVID, things that we couldn't do. I think Lisa alluded to the menu of different lab opportunities. I used the Google site. It was free. And I put faculty members or the facilitators, the content, learning objectives, handouts. I was able to package kind of what was going to happen and what were the opportunities for students to receive. I first did it, as I said, we started in spring 2020 with just a few weeks left, but really launched in summer. And it started with, just month by month, and sometimes it was even week by week, because as I was updating the site, more people were contacting me saying, I want to do this too. I want to, join. So it was, it was interesting, and we've crossed lines now from, as we said, curriculum. So sometimes the students that were interested in schools were now coming over to the other there was no limitations. Students got to meet faculty members, network with people outside of the school, learn about the doctoral program, all unanticipated moments of joy that we had as a school. So the programs that we've brought to you today, they are continuing. They haven't stopped. Mine has evolved into a professional development program at the school, where we are continuing to invite people to provide professional development sessions, because another unanticipated is, as students were in virtual spaces, going out into, again, now the community-based agencies might feel a little bit different. So we want to give them another runway to feel comfortable going out into their now jobs in their communities. Any questions? Did y'all fall asleep? Y'all can't fall asleep. Here's our contact information. Here, completely out. I am also a yoga instructor, and sometimes this happens at the end of class. I'm gonna stop sharing.
Yeah.
We lost Bob too. Yes, you're still awake. Thank you, Amber.
I think the
I'm here.
biggest takeaway for me was, at the time of spring 2020, there was such panic, and what do we do? What do we do? And it gave us the opportunity to be creative. And I, just speaking for myself, sometimes in academia, that trying to manage disruptions for myself, sometimes I lose the creativity. And so it was a wonderful opportunity to remind myself, oh, you can be an academic and you could be creative as well. And it really brought back the joy for me in teaching.
Yeah.
Reading some of the chat, reflecting on the panic, boy, that was a panic, especially when we had, different places. Being California, we had one directive, Florida, living in Florida, there's another directive, and really found how much students really needed that connection to help move their way through, because we also had to remember, as we, Carrie and I talk about all the time, and Melissa, we all do disaster work in some way. Oftentimes the helpers are also just as impacted. And so, students were coming in really seeking the knowledge to help support their communities, but they too were struggling with some of the limitations that, having children at home, caring for family members. We really were helping develop a more supportive, and really noticing that sometimes when we continue working and moving forward, steam ahead, always, following, we forget sometimes how important that connection is, and how can we deepen that when we don't have that opportunity to actually see someone in person. And so it's always such a really important experience to have. I had one of our students that participated in one of the online programs, happened to be in my area with a college tour with their child. And they said, hey, can we meet? And it was pretty interesting to sit across from a person that I'd never sat in the same space for outside of Zoom, but to not feel a difference. And I think that's one of the important features that made us really think and realize how much we need one another and that online support, so that we are not feeling like we're on an island. And I think a lot of people were on islands in their homes and not having that connection.
Mm-hmm. It looks so different for so many, like the connection and how you connect really matters, like just personally, and then how that works in the workforce, whether you're a phone person, you're a Zoom person. There were times where we just opened our Zoom rooms and said, jump in, I'm open from 4 to 6. Anybody want to say hello? I'm working. It's like an open cubicle. Come on by. Here's my link. Stop by, say hello. Or a writing session. We all have something to do, and we're just gonna
We'll do it at one time.
But cameras are off or cameras are on, and we're all writing a section of something that we need to do. So we found ways as faculty members, but also understanding that the students were finding ways. And this, the programs that we created was one of their outlets.
Yeah, you're right. And this is part of what we should do now, is reflect back on, the whole COVID pandemic and how we responded and what happened during it, so we can do a better job the next time. That involves lots of things, but the point you're making, that was really important, and it still is in a lot of places, really important. The students, this was almost their one method of social contact, and it's something faculty need to be aware of. Some are, but you get maybe an engineering professor who's not necessarily the most warm human being, but he needs to understand that in times like that, students need more than just lecturing at them. They need some hand holding. They need words of encouragement. And hopefully we will have learned those lessons and integrate them into our response the next time this happens.
Well, I think even integrating it every day, because I have started everything that I implemented during COVID, I maintain. I mean, I just sat with these ladies just the other day, just sometimes to have a shared workspace, because we all work virtually from home. I haven't seen Carrie Doyle since before COVID, and Melissa probably in the same amount of time, even though we live in the same state. And so, you creating those, not forgetting the importance of, we all kind of get used to the monotony of the job and what we need to do, but how do we create those opportunities to really enhance and build more satisfaction? Because the happier I am as a faculty member, the more engaging I am with my students. It had an impact kind of across my whole practice. And so trying to maintain those so that when we are faced with another challenge, that we've developed some better resources and better practice to maintain an existence and some resources on how to fall back on as we move forward.
One of the things too is that to build that relationship with the students, maybe not so altruistic a goal, but you want, you're looking at future graduates of the university who you hope maintain the close connection, give money to the university down the road, or have their kids or grandkids come to the university. And that's one of the things I was trying to emphasize, that we need to find some ways to better build the connection between the online students and the school. And that's one way to do it. They walk away feeling really good about it, and maybe 20 years down the road, they'll donate $1 million to the school. I mean, that's a practical reason, but yeah, I try to encourage university clubs to try and include online students, or the student governing body include online students, but a way to build the connection.
Well, every day we have students that are alumni of our program, because we have a practicum component where students have to go into community-based placements. And there's no greater joy than having a student who had the benefit of having some of that support come back and say, listen, I meet the criteria now to become a practicum supervisor. I really would like to host students and impart some of their experience. We value that so much, and they already then have like that foundation of what are the expectations of our university program. And so it's always a really happy opportunity for me, because I do post that matching to see how many alumni are coming back and supporting our students after they've left our program and met the requirements years later. So it's not like they can leave and stay connected. They have to meet, some requirements prior to being able to come back and supervise. And the fact that they're coming back to give back to their program really means that connection, and it builds kind of that community.
Well, I think we're out of time. I enjoyed your presentation, and really help us to remember the joy of online education and the things we can do to make it joyful, not just for students, but for us as well. So anyway, I appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. And I'll remind people at the top of the hour, we have another session coming up, and hope to see you all there.